title is Welcome, Grapple fans. Let's say that together. Welcome, Grapple fans. All right. Our text is Genesis chapter 32, verses 24 to 32. So that's Genesis chapter 32, verses 24 to 32. And should be coming up on PowerPoint now. Let's read together after three. And Jacob was left alone, and a man wrestled with him until the breaking of the day. When the man saw that he did not prevail against Jacob, he touched his hip socket, and Jacob's hip was put out of joint as he wrestled with him. Then he said, "Let me go, for the day has broken." But Jacob said, "I will not let you go unless you bless me." And he said to him, "What is your name?" And he said, "Jacob." Then he said, "Your name shall no longer be called Jacob, but Israel. For you have striven with God and with men and have prevailed." Then Jacob asked him, "Please tell me your name." But he said, "Why is it that you ask my name?" And there he blessed him. So Jacob called the name of the place Peniel, saying, "For I have seen God face to face, yet my life has been delivered." The sun rose upon him as he passed Peniel, limping because of his hip. Therefore to this day the people of Israel do not eat the sinew of the thigh that is on the hip socket, because he touched the socket of Jacob's hip on the sinew of his thigh. Last couple of weeks, we've been looking at some things that undermine our faith, haven't we? And today I want to take another look at what biblical faith looks like. What biblical faith looks like. So let's just remind ourselves of what biblical faith is. Very quickly, one or two people. Definition of faith in Jesus. That's what we're talking about. Not faith in Chelsea Football Club, but faith in Jesus. What is the definition of faith in Jesus? Linda.
Being aware of his promises and hold on to them no matter what it looks like.
Be aware of his promises and hold on to them no matter what he looks like. Anybody else?
Just putting all your trust and confidence in him.
Brilliant.
Nothing else.
Putting all your trust and putting all your confidence in Jesus. Putting all your trust and all your confidence in Jesus and in his promises and what he said. That's brilliant. Now, our text describes an incident in the life of Jacob, who was one of the patriarchs of Israel. In the early 70s, there were two things that I loved watching on TV in the early 70s. Two programs. One of them was Love Thy Neighbor. Anybody remember Love Thy Neighbor? And then the second thing I loved watching was wrestling matches. 4 p.m. Mina, 4 p.m. on a Saturday. Millions of us used to tune in to watch wrestling. Remember Mina, Big Daddy, Giant Haystacks, yes, and Johnny Saint. And Kendo Nakasi, him, yes, that's right. And it was tremendous. 4 o'clock on a Saturday, ITV, everything. We used to, in our house, we used to push back all the chairs, all the sofas, create a ring, you see. And then we'd start wrestling and experiment with pile drivers, Mina. Pile drivers, remember pile drivers? You know, that's what he did to Simon. That's what's wrong with his head. But it was tremendous, and it was what was tremendous when you watched, Jennifer, the wrestling on TV, was you seeing the women with their handbags, you know, and they'd rush to the ring and start hitting giant haystacks. And Mina was there. Mina was there. She would be there with the handbag hitting. You know, I saw you, Mina. I saw you. Wrestling. It was tremendous. See, for me, For me, for me, life is a wrestle. You know? Is it a wrestle for you? But for me, life is a wrestling match, actually. It is a wrestling match. Now, it seems to me we can wrestle with life without God, or we can wrestle with life with God. We can wrestle with life without God, or we can wrestle with life with God. Are you ready? Here we go. Let's get into our text. Jacob's life was a wrestle. His life was full of bad decisions and bad advice. If you read the life of Jacob, this patriarch of Israel, I mean, what a struggle. What a struggle. He had a twin brother named Esau, and Esau was probably a few seconds or maybe a few minutes, not much more than that, older than him. Esau grew up to be a man's man and was the favorite of their father. Jacob, I think, was a mother's boy, okay? And he was also a bit of a cheat and wasn't frightened of using others to get what he wanted. He did a number of bad things, and he was encouraged to do some bad things, which made his life a real wrestle. Number one, he stole his brother's birthright. So what is a birthright? A birthright fell in Jewish culture to the eldest. And what they would do, if you were the eldest, you would get the right to carry the family name. And the other thing that you got was a double portion of the inheritance. One day, Esau comes in. He's a man's man. He's a hunter-gatherer. He loves hunting. He loves getting out with the lads and laughing and messing about and chasing the women, and so on. And one day, after all his antics, he comes home and he's absolutely starving. And Jacob, who's a mother's boy, he's in the house. He's spending time with the women. He's cooking and doing that sort of stuff, and very content. And Esau comes in and he's starving. He sees Jacob's cooking some food, and he says to Jacob, "I'm starving. Give me some food." And Jacob says, "Not unless you give me your birthright." And Esau says, "What's the use of a birthright to me, and I'm starving?" And so he said, "Okay." And he gives Jacob his birthright. He's given Jacob the double portion of the inheritance that was to come to him. He's given him a double portion, and he's given him the right to carry the family name. And so there's that exchange, and Esau eats his food. Leighton Rabbi Sachs says this, that Esau ate, he drank, he rose, he left, he despised, and carried on with his life. Jacob has got the double portion. When Esau and Jacob's father was about to die, the father says to Esau, "My son, I'm about to die. I'm about to leave this earth, and I want to give you my blessing." Now, this blessing is a prophetic blessing. Now, they believe that when they gave you a prophetic blessing, they were giving you the word of the Lord. And that this word of the Lord would actually guide your life and tell you what God was going to do in your life. You needed to have a blessing from God, but it must be a prophetic blessing. That was more precious than silver coins, more precious than gold coins, more precious than livestock. Because if God is for you, then who can be against you? And if God says you're going to be blessed, no matter what earthquake comes, no matter what tsunami comes, no matter what war may come in your lifetime, you will be blessed. So the prophetic blessing was sought of by the children from their fathers. And so here we go. So Esau's excited because his father Isaac's saying, right, I want to bless you. But he says, but before I bless you, I want you to go and make me a meal. Now, son, you know the sort of food I like. You know the sort of game I like. You know what sort of animal I like. You know how I like it cooked and I like it prepared. You're my boy. You're my boy. So go on, go and do that, right? I'm about to die. And go and do this for me and bring it to me and I'll eat it and then I'm going to bless you. I'm going to release the prophetic blessing of God into your life and you're going to prosper and you're going to go from one degree of glory to another. Come on, son. We've been waiting for this time, haven't we? Remember, they were close. And so Esau's really excited. He gets his bow, he gets his arrows, and off he goes to hunt, to kill, and then to prepare and bring back for his father to eat so he can receive this prophetic blessing which will set him up for life. Well, Jacob was his mother's favorite. And mother overhears the conversation, you see, Di. And she's heard it all. And she says to Jacob, boy, listen, your father's called in Esau to bless, said he's going to bless him because he's about to die. And he's asked him to go and get some food and kill and hunt and get some, and then prepare a meal in which he the sort of meal he'd like and so on. And then he'll receive a blessing. You need to get in on this. Now you need to go. I'm going to do. You need to do what I'm telling you to do. All right, and I'm going to prepare a meal. So you go and get me a couple of goats, right, from our stock, and then I'll prepare them in the way that your father likes, and we'll present it. And Jacob says, yeah, but you'll know I'm Jacob and I'm not Esau. My voice is different. I look different. I behave. Dad's blind and struggling to see, but he'll know that it, first of all by my voice that I'm not Esau. She said, be quiet. Just listen to me. Do what I'll tell you, and it's going to work out fine. And so he goes, he gets her 2 goats, and he brings them in and gives them to his mum. His mum prepares them in the way that the father would like, and then she tells him to go and get some of his brother's clothes. And so he goes and he gets his brother's clothes. He puts on his brother's clothes, and then she takes she skins the goats, and she takes the fur that she's taken off the goat, Charlotte, and she puts it on his hands and on his arms, because Esau's hairy, you see. Jacob's smooth skin, but Esau's hairy. So she thinks, well, I've got to make him hairy, else his father will know, because if he touches him, his father will know by the smoothness of his skin that it's not Esau. So she covers that. She sorts that out. And then she presents the food to Jacob, and Jacob takes it in to his father. He says, Father, rise and eat and bless me. Here's the food that you want. And his father says, yeah, but that's the voice of Jacob. That's not the voice of Esau. And how have you managed to do it so quick? And Jacob said, well, God was with me. God made it happen. And so his father says, come near. Come near, and Jacob takes the food and brings it to his father. His father eats it, but also smells Jacob, and because he's got Esau's clothes on, he smells like Esau. He smells like the fields. He smells like the woodland, etc. And his father's saying his voice is different, but he does smell like Esau. He doesn't get it anyway. So he eats the food, and then he turns, and he blesses Jacob, thinking he's blessing Esau. And what a blessing. What a prophetic blessing. This blessing is about prosperity. This blessing is about expansion. This blessing is about honor. the heavens will honor him. The fields will honor him. Everything will honor him. Everything will yield to him. He will prosper. He will do well. And he will reign over his brothers. He will lead his brothers. He will be the boss of his brothers. He will be number one in the household. He will carry the name. And the covenant of Abraham will be worked out through him. What a blessing. You couldn't get a better blessing. Everything, his future was secured. And Jacob receives that. He receives it. Not meant to be for him, but he receives it. And then suddenly Esau arrives as Jacob leaves the room carrying this blessing in his heart and in his mind. He leaves the room, and as he leaves the room, Esau suddenly rushes in, and Esau has prepared the food and everything the way that his father would like, and he presents it. And Esau says, "I'm here, father, now bless me." And as his father hears the voice of Esau, so he begins to tremble on his bed. He begins to shake violently on the bed, and he says to Esau, "Who is it that's come in before me, before you? Because I have blessed them, and oh, they are blessed indeed." And Esau said, "That must be my brother Jacob. So his name is Jacob, a cheat, a swindler, and so he is. But father, have you not a blessing for me? Have you not one blessing for me?" And his father's distressed. And Esau pleads with his father for a blessing. And eventually Esau finds a blessing. Oh, I hope you're hearing this, fathers. Because you shouldn't have one blessing if you've got more than one child. You should have a blessing for every child. But Esau only had one blessing because he had a favorite. And Esau pressed in and said, "What about me, father?" And the tears fell from his eyes. And Isaac, his dad, blessed him, and said, "You won't be blessed by the heavens and the dew of the earth, and rocky places will be where you live, and you will one day shake off the control of your brother." It wasn't great. But that's all he had, faith to hear from God, to give to Esau, his son. Well, Esau is mad. He goes ballistic. "I'm going to kill him. I'm going to kill Jacob. I'm going to take him off the face of the earth. And when my father's died, I'm going to take him out." And his mother hears the things that Esau is saying, the threats that he is telling people about regarding what he's going to do with Jacob. And Jacob has to go on the run. He leaves his family. He leaves his mother, his dearly beloved mother. He leaves his father, whom he loves. He leaves everything that he knows, and he goes on on the run. His mother says to him, "Go to your uncle Laban. Go and live there and dwell there, and wait till things calm down, and then I'll send for you, and you can come back." And so off he goes. Off he goes to his uncle. And whilst he's on his own, walking that distance, maybe running the distance, I don't know how far it is, he has an experience. He has what we call a theophany. And Lib's just going to read that to us now from Genesis chapter 28, verse 10 to 22.
Jacob left Beersheba and went toward Haran, and he came to a certain place and stayed there that night, because the sun had set. Taking one of the stones of the place, he put it under his head and lay down in that place to sleep. And he dreamed. And behold, there was a ladder set up on the earth, and the top of it reached to heaven. And behold, the angels of God were ascending and descending on it. And behold, the Lord stood above it and said, "I am the Lord, the God of Abraham, your father, and the God of Isaac. The land on which you lie, I will give to you and to your offspring. Your offspring shall be like the dust of the earth, and you shall spread abroad to the west, to the east, to the north, and to the south. And in you and your offspring shall all the families of the earth be blessed. Behold, I am with you, and I will keep you wherever you go, and will bring you back to this land. For I will not leave you until I have done what I have promised you. Then Jacob awoke from his sleep and said, Surely the Lord is in this place, and I didn't know it. He was afraid and said, How awesome is this place? This is none other than the house of God, and this is the gate of heaven. So early in the morning Jacob took the stone that he had had under his head and set it up for a pillar. He poured oil on the top of it, and he called the place Bethel. Then Jacob made a vow, saying, If God will be with me, and will keep me in this way that I go, and will give me bread to eat and clothing to wear, so that I come again to my father's house in peace, then the Lord shall be my God, and this stone which I have set up for a pillar shall be God's house. And of all that you give me, I will give a full tenth to you.
He's born again. He's born again. He's become a believer in God. He's no longer living off the faith of Isaac, his father, and his mother, but he has had a theophany. The heavens have opened. He sees the ladder. He sees the ladder of a ladder of heaven, placed before him. He sees angels of God ascending and descending. He sees God at the top of the ladder, and God speaks to him. And God says, I've called you. And God blesses him. And God says, I'll be with you. And I'll bring you back safely. Just follow me. Suddenly, he, as the rabbinic writers would say, he bumped into God. Have you ever bumped into God? When I was 13, I bumped into God. He took hold of me. I suddenly saw that there was a God. I suddenly saw that he loved me. I suddenly saw that Jesus had died on the cross for me. I suddenly saw that life was in Jesus and in no one else. I suddenly realized that he had a plan for my life to bless me and prosper me. I've suddenly realized that I could have my sins forgiven and I can have the wonderful gift of eternal life and immortality. I bumped into God and I stopped in my tracks and I bowed my knee and became a follower of Jesus. And so this is what happens to Jacob. He bumps into God. And he says, Lord, if you're going to be with me and you're going to take care of me and you're going to bring me back, and I will give you 10% of all that you've given me. For those of you who are legalistic about tithing and think that 10% is part of the Moses law, no, it isn't. Jacob was before Moses. And actually before Jacob was Abraham. And Abraham tithed. It's an expression of thanksgiving for the goodness of God and the kindness of God. It's an expression of thanksgiving because all that we have belongs to the Lord. He is born again. And so he becomes a follower of God, and now he puts his faith, say that with me, his faith in God. All right? In God. He puts his trust and confidence in God. And he goes off and he continues on to his uncles. He arrives at his uncle, and his uncle tricks him. his uncle's got a daughter. She's beautiful. She's absolutely drop dead gorgeous. He thinks he's gone to heaven already when he puts his eyes upon her. And so he says to his uncle, he says, I'll work for you 7 years, and then you give me for your daughter. And Laban says, his uncle says, that's fine. We'll do that. And so he works for him 7 years. 7 years. He must have been in love. Think about it. 7 years. 7 years. I tell you, some of us guys that were told by our father-in-laws that we had to work 7 years would have said, on your Nelly. 7 years he worked. And then after the 7th year, he's having his marriage. And they're getting wed, and she comes into his tent, and the marriage is consummated, and everything's fine. And he wakes up in the morning, and he's startled because it's not the daughter that he expected, the youngest daughter, but it's actually the older daughter. He's livid, and he says, "You've tricked me." And his uncle says, "Well, it's not good to marry the youngest off, but before the eldest gets married. So I've given you the eldest. You can have the youngest as long as you do another 7 years for me." And so he does another 7 years, and God blesses him, and he prospers, and he does really well. But his uncle changes his wages 10 times. And no matter how he did, the uncle, however he sought to look after the uncle's livestock, the uncle kept tricking him and trying to get more out of him. And I love this bit. It says that he worked for his uncle day and night, and because he was a shepherd, any livestock that got damaged by or killed by wild animals, he bore the brunt of that himself. He paid for that himself. And he just kept on. And yet his uncle just kept doing bad things towards him. Well, eventually he feels that that's enough. He can't take any more. He's done 20 years for his uncle, slave labor, but he's been blessed. But he's prospered. But he has a huge estate because God promised him that he would take care of him. And so God did. Anyway, cut a long story short, he flees from his uncle, and because God has revealed to him that it's time for him to go back to the land of his birth. And so he flees from his uncle, and his uncle goes after him, and his uncle wants to destroy him because he's taken his daughters. His uncle believes he's taken his wealth, which he hadn't done. And so he wants to destroy him. But God steps in. Say, God steps in. And he speaks to Laban at night and says, "Speak neither good or bad to Jacob." Now, interesting, this. He says, watch what you're saying to him. Watch what you're doing. I don't want you to encourage him. I don't want you to discourage him. I don't care whether you believe in me, Laban. I'm speaking to you now. Because Laban didn't believe in him. And he said, I'm speaking to you. You say nothing good or bad to Jacob. Watch yourself. Isn't it great to have God on your side? And so they have a meeting. And Laban did a bit of moaning. But he said, God has said to me that I must speak neither good or bad to you. And they agreed to go their different ways. Well, remember, Jacob is on his way back to where he lives, where he was born, is he not? And he's got someone to face. And the person he's got to face is whom? Who is his brother. And so he's panicking because Esau had promised to do what? To kill him. Okay? And so he's really panicking. But God has told him to go back. How many of you know that experience? That God says, go back to somewhere where what has been painful for you, whether it could be your fault it's been painful, or somebody else's fault doing it, it's been painful, but bottom line, it's painful. And God says, go back there. I'm with you, go back. And so he's praying about it, and he's thinking about what he can do to placate his brother, and he decides he's going to send his brother presents. Now, these are presents of a prosperous man. These are presents of a wealthy man. You know, there's not just a box of chocolates or some Scotch whiskey. All right, this is animals. This is flocks. This is herds. This is major stuff where money was, which they used for money and so on. And by your size of your flocks and herds, etc., was your wealth judged. And so he's sending these presents back, okay, and he's spreading them out. All right, he's doing everything. He thinks, all right, I'll soften his heart. I'll give him one present, and then when he thinks that's it, I'll wait a while and I'll send him another. And then he thinks that's it, and then I'll send him some more. I will heap kindness upon him, and maybe he'll let me off. And then he prays to the Lord. After he's done that, he then prays to the Lord. Genesis 32, verses 9 to 12. Demelza, when you're ready. Thank you very much.
And Jacob said, O God of my father Abraham, and God of my father Isaac, O Lord, who said to me, return to your country and to your kindred, that I may do you good. I am not worthy of at least all the deeds of steadfast love and all the faithfulness that you have shown to your servant. For with only my staff I crossed this Jordan, and now I have become two camps. Please deliver me from the hand of my brother, from the hand of Esau, for I fear him, that he may come and attack me, the mothers with the children. But you said, I will surely do you good. And make your offspring as the sand of the sea, which cannot be numbered for multitude.
And so he prays, and then he puts his wife in a particular place, and the children in a particular place, which he thinks that they'll be safe. And then he has another theophany. As he's there, after he's prayed, he's meditating on God and what is to come. And suddenly a man appears. And this man appears, and they begin to wrestle. They begin to wrestle. And the scripture says that they wrestle all night. They wrestle till daybreak. Now, in Greco-Roman wrestling, you wrestle in, there's two halves to a wrestling match. 3 minutes each half, and then a 30-second rest in between. But this wrestling went on all night. I mean, imagine. He's fighting with this person. They're wrestling away, and it's taking all night. It's exhausting. If you've ever wrestled with somebody for 2 minutes, I mean, it's tiring. And here they go at it, seemingly all night. And as they're wrestling, it says that this man touches his hip socket. In the ESV, it says it touches his hip socket. In other words, if you look in the Hebrew Bible, in the Tanakh, it says this, that, in other words, this man wrenched Jacob's hip at its socket, so that the socket of his hip was strained as they wrestled. So he wrenched it. So this guy gets hold of him because he can't get away from Jacob. He can't get free from Jacob. Jacob won't let him go. So he gets hold of his hips and he wrenches it. He pulls it and he strains it. And after doing that, Jacob still will not let him go. And they continue to wrestle. They continue to fight. And the guy says, it's coming to daybreak now. You need to let me go. You need to let me go now. And Jacob says, no, I'll not let you go. I want a blessing before I let you go. I want you to bless me. I want you to pour God's blessing into my life. I want you to speak over my life. And I'll not let you go until you do that. And so the person turns to him. and and says, right, I'll release a blessing to you. The first question I need to ask, who is this person? I believe that this person is the pre-incarnate Christ. I don't believe it's an angel, and I'll tell you why in a minute. I believe it's the pre-incarnate Christ, that he's wrestling with the pre-incarnate Christ. He's wrestling with Jesus. And Jesus turns to him and says, I rename you. I give you a new name. The name I give you is Israel. Your name has been known as Jacob, cheater, swindler, but now I rename you Israel. One who strives with God and man, yet has prevailed. To prevail, what does that mean? To prevail, it means to be able. In other words, you've striven with God and man, and now you are able. Now you have power. Now you will endure. Now you will overcome. I have made you have become able. And so your name is Israel. You've wrestled with God, and you've wrestled with men, and you've overcome. You've pushed through, and you've overcome. And the man disappeared. And Jacob realizes, he says, I've seen God, and yet I still live. I put to you that it's the pre-incarnate Christ. And he presses on. And he goes back to where he came, where he was born. And he settles there. He meets his brother. And his brother is gracious to him. God has changed his brother's heart. And his heart is generous towards him. But it doesn't end there. He still continues to wrestle with life. Because Jacob's daughter, his only daughter, is raped. And I don't know if any of you know what that's like. Have experienced that. It's an awful thing to occur. Awful thing to occur. And so he knew the pain of not being able to protect his daughter. He knew the pain of feeling weak and powerless to defend his daughter. He knew that horror in his life. And not only did his pain didn't just stop there, but his favorite son. He had a favorite, you see. He didn't learn from his father's mistakes. He had a favorite son, and his son was Joseph. And he thought that his son Joseph had been killed by wild animals. And he didn't see him for 13 years. It nearly destroyed his life. It nearly took him out. He nearly died. The grief nearly took him out. But for God, he kept on going. You see, faith looks like a wrestling match. You're fighting with God. You're fighting with men. You're fighting with this and you're fighting with that. You're fighting with trials. You're fighting with troubles. You're fighting with yourself. You're fighting with your mistakes. You're fighting with other people's mistakes. You're fighting with that which is opposing you, that which is opposing your family, that's opposing you in your workplace. You're fighting, wrestling. If anybody knows what I'm talking about, say amen. It's just a big wrestle is life. And when you become a Christian, the wrestle does not decrease. Remember, after his first theophany, he then finds that he's wrestling. After he becomes born again, he finds that he's wrestling. Wrestling. To follow God, you've got to be up for the wrestle. You've got to become a Grapple fan. You've got to be excited about the wrestle of life. That's why Paul says, put on the armor of God. There's not a text that says that he said, take it off. You've got to put on the armor of God because life is a fight. And faith is a wrestle. And life is a wrestle. Whether you believe in God or not, whether you have faith in God or not, it's a wrestle. But how about engaging in the wrestle of life with faith in God? Because that makes all the difference. Jacob would not let go. And I sense God wants to applaud some of you today. Because as Christians, you have been wrestling with life. But you will not let God go. You've been like Jacob. You've been fighting and fighting and fighting against the things that you have done wrong, that other people have done wrong, that politicians have done wrong, that educationists have done wrong, etc. You've been fighting with yourself, etc. And there's so many times that you feel that you could have given up, but you've kept on wrestling. In other words, you've refused to give up because you believe in God. You trust Him. And sometimes that trust hasn't in God that you've got doesn't make you feel happy, you don't feel inspired, you don't feel thrilled, moved and motivated and glorified. You just feel tired and you feel worn, but you're hanging on for dear life. And sometimes that circumstance and that situation in life has hit you in your hip and has damaged your walk. It's damaged how you stand, but you've still held on. And you've said, oh God, even in this, bless me. Even in this, keep me. Even in this, bless me. And people have said to you, look how you walk. Look, in other words, what you're living with. Look how, the sort of job you've got. Look at this. Where is God with this? Where is this God that you serve? He's not healed you. He's not delivered you. He's not saved you. He's not changed your circumstance. He's not given you a partner. You're still on your own. You're walking with the limp of those things. Where is your God? And you've said, I don't know. But this I know. I have to hold on to Jesus because there's nothing else to hold on to. He will bring me through. And I don't know where, and I don't know how, and I don't know when, but I'm not letting Him go. I'm not letting Him go. And I want to say to you today, if that is you, if that's where you're at, if God says, good and well done, because that is faith. You see, some people were nervous when I started to look at this subject of faith, and the only reason why I could think they were nervous is because they were thinking that I would be preaching, prosperity gospel, name it and claim it. You want a car? Sow some money in the offering and you'll get a car. You want a house? Sow some money in the offering and you'll get a house. You want your healing? Sow some money and you'll get some. You want greater anointing? Sow some money and you'll get greater anointing in your life. It's a life from the pit of hell. God is not a slot machine. All that is a distraction to cause us to not understand what it is to have faith in Jesus Christ. Trust and confidence in Jesus Christ. And it is simply this, that I wrestle with life with my trust in Jesus. And no matter what win, I will not let go, for He has promised to bless me. I will trust Him, and I will believe in Him, and I will put my confidence in Him, because He has promised not to let me go. I love some Psalms. I love, to be honest, the Psalms of lament. Psalm 13. Let me read this to you. This is a wrestle. Psalm from King David. How long, O Lord, will you forget me? Forever? How long will you hide your face from me? How long must I take counsel in my soul and have sorrow in my heart all the day? How long shall my enemy be exalted over me? Consider and answer me, O Lord my God. Light up my eyes, lest I sleep the sleep of death. Lest my enemies say, I have prevailed over him. Lest my foes rejoice, because I am shaken. But, say that with me. But I have trusted in your steadfast love. My heart will rejoice in your salvation. I will sing to the Lord, because he has dealt bountifully with me. Now you telling me that after he has cried out and said, how long will you hide your face from me? After he said, how long will you forget me forever? After he said, consider and answer me, O Lord, light up my eyes, lest I sleep the sleep of death. Are you telling me that suddenly he feels excited? Suddenly his emotions has changed, you see, Ange, and suddenly he's wanting to say, but I have trusted in the steadfast love of the Lord, and my heart will rejoice in your salvation, and I'll sing to the Lord because he has dealt bountifully for me. Are you telling me that he moves from sorrow and difficulty and tiredness of wrestling to skipping and jumping? No, not at all. What happens here is that he fixes his eyes on the promises of God. He fixes his eyes on the things that he knows about God. And he says, but I have trusted in your steadfast love, and my heart shall rejoice in your salvation. I will sing to the Lord because he has dealt bountifully with me. He says, I'm going to hold on to God with all that I've got. And I know I will see the goodness of the Lord in the land of the living, in my generation. That's what he said. He speaks to himself and says, but. That's faith. That's what faith looks like. Psalm 22. This is a picture of Jesus on the cross. And he says this. This is a prophetic word, prophesying what Jesus would have been going through on the cross. In Psalm 22, it says, my God, why have you forsaken me? Anybody ever felt like that? My God, wave that hand, Mandy, wave it. My God, why have you forsaken me? Why are you so far from saving me? From the words of my groaning, oh my God, I cry day by day, but you do not answer. Anybody have experienced that? All right. And by night, I find no rest. Anybody feels that the rest flees them like when they're wrestling? Yeah. Yet, say that with me, yet. Turn to somebody and say, yet, you are holy, enthroned on the praises of Israel. In you our fathers trusted. They trusted and you delivered them. To you they cried and were rescued. In you they trusted and were not put to shame. Even though, I'm asking, where are you? Even though I feel abandoned, even though I feel you've forgotten me, yet I will remember this, that you are holy, that you are enthroned. My feelings don't change your reality. My feelings don't change the truth. My feelings don't affect the eternal truth. He says, yet you are holy, enthroned on the praises of Israel. This is what Jesus was saying on the cross. He's saying, yet you are holy, Father, enthroned on the praises of Israel. In you our fathers trusted. They trusted and you delivered them. To you they cried and were rescued. In you they trusted and were not put to shame. He knew the Old Testament, did Jesus. He knew the Torah. He knew the Pentateuch. He knew the Holy Scriptures. And on the cross, he said, because he was theanthropism, fully God and fully man, perfectly God and perfectly man. He said, this is how I feel, Father. I'm fulfilling the mission. I'm doing what you call me to do. This is how I feel. Yet, you are holy. You are enthroned on the praises of Israel. And you will rescue, and you will deliver, like you always have. That's what faith looks like, ladies and gentlemen. Faith says, I trust you, Lord, and I will engage in the wrestle of life with my confidence in you, and I will not let you go. Not let you go. No matter what, because you are God, and you are just, and you are good, and you are true, and you always do what you say you're going to do. And so I might be exhausted. I might have cried and cried and cried until there's no more tears, Chris. I might have felt at night that I might as well give up and leave this earth. Even no matter how I felt, I will hold on to you, Lord. I will wrestle with life, with my confidence, with my faith, with my trust in you. I will not let go. Without faith, it is impossible to please God. You have to believe that He is, and He's a rewarder of those who seek Him. Jesus believed that the Father is, and a rewarder of those who seek Him. David believed that the Father is, and a rewarder of those who seek Him. You believe that the Father is who He says He is, and He's a rewarder of those who seek Him. And God says to you today, well done. Well done for wrestling. Well done for continuing to engage in the wrestle of life. But well done for doing it with your faith in me. And I feel that God would say to some of you that though there seems to be a lot of tears, joy is coming your way. I can't tell you when, but I tell you it's coming your way. But mark my words, when it comes, you'll still have to wrestle. You'll still have to wrestle with life. Because this life is just a training ground. That's all it is. That's all it is. It's a school of faith. So that when you leave, you can stand before Him with your held high, saying, Lord, I've been faithful. I hung on to you no matter what. I didn't get it, Lord, but I hung on to you. I didn't like it, Lord, but I hung on to you. It caused me pain, Lord. I hung on to you. I lost so much, Lord, but I hung on to you. I walk with a limp now, Lord, because I hung on to you. I have sorrow in my heart because I hung on to you. And He says, I take your mourning and I'll turn it into joy. I'll take your brokenness and I'll bring you into my healing. I'll take that sense of captivity that you've known and bring you into true liberty. Because you've clung on to me and engaged in the wrestle of life with your faith in me. God says, well done. Well done, for engaging in the wrestle of life.